Welcome to the Crash Course, your go-to podcast with Greg Watson and Stephanie Moran. Discover expert advice on navigating legal claims and winning strategies. Tune in now and stay ahead of the game.
Welcome to the Crash Course with Greg Watson and Stephanie Moran. I'm Sam Henniger, and I'm excited to get into this episode today. So Greg and Stephanie, when someone is in a car accident and they're injured, what are the typical steps for actually paying the medical bills?
So when someone is in an auto accident, if you're in an auto accident, you're transported from the scene by ambulance to a hospital. Depending on your state, they're going to try to get your health insurance, maybe figure out what auto insurances are in play so that they can have documentation so that they can later be paid for that compensation. So once you are out of the hospital or able to contact an attorney, you want to do so. You want to make sure they know what hospitals you went to. You want to and what medical provider you saw so that the attorneys can make sure you know how to make sure to give the proper insurance to those facilities so they can bill insurance. One thing to keep in mind, there's various different insurance plans out here. There's so many. Some people have insurance through their jobs, some people have it through their spouses, and some people are on state insurance or Medicaid or Medicare. And a lot of times the insurance policies have different deadlines, and sometimes this is state-based as well, as to how long you have to file a claim with the insurance policy so that they pay that bill. So one thing you want to do is make sure that your attorney knows that you went to the hospital where you went, so either they can help you contact that facility to make sure you've given the proper insurance, whether you're using your health insurance or PIP coverage so the bill could be covered, or that they are able to make sure they're able to tell you to do that yourself. So that's very important. Once the bills come, you want to make sure you give a copy of that bill to your attorney. You don't know how many clients I say, oh, you went to this place, we need the bill. Oh yeah, I threw it in the trash. I hear that more often than not. The people say they threw the bill in the trash. Do not throw your medical bills in the trash. In fact, any correspondence you get related to your auto accident, whether you think it is trash or a solicitation or someone bugging you, give the correspondence to your attorney, no matter what it is, if it's related to the accident.
I agree. And another wrinkle to that is that the hospitals typically, even when you come in and you give them your health insurance information, you have health insurance, they won't typically bill health insurance because once they code it that you're in the ER related to an auto accident, the hospitals are going to hold out for your personal protection, assuming that you have it. And you may not have it. If you waived it, you don't have it. And in that case, they won't just automatically bill your health insurance usually. And then you're not knowing that you have a hospital bill that's out there that has not been applied to your health insurance, assuming you have it, and you have an outstanding bill that has been taken care of.
And I do want to add on something here. I want to take a moment to educate people on this. A lot of times people will be surprised to find if you go to the hospital, the average person rightfully is going to think, okay, I went to the hospital, I'm going to get one bill. That is actually often not the case. When you go to a hospital, there's actually sometimes 3 or more bills that may be associated with that one visit. When you go to a hospital emergency room, you are going to get a bill typically that's called the hospital or facility bill. That is actually a bill for the fact that you were seen in this particular facility. But then when you go to the hospital, you're going to see a doctor is going to see you or a physician's assistant, and they will have their own bill, believe it or not. A lot of people don't understand that many doctors don't work per se for the hospital. A lot of times doctors are in private practices and they have a relationship with the hospital where they see patients in the hospital, but a lot of times doctors have another practice or they just have their own physician's bill. So you're going to get the hospital facility bill, which is for the building that technically you were seen in. Then that actual doctor or more than one doctor who treated you is going to have a physician's bill. And then the x-rays and scans and MRIs and things you may need on your body to make sure you don't have broken bones or, a type of brain injury or something, there's going to come with a radiology bill. And then sometimes you might have a lab bill. So there's often more than one bill that comes from a hospital visit. Some hospitals are trying to combine the bills into one because the average person doesn't know this. You wouldn't think that. You think I went to one stop shop, I'm going to get one bill. But you're seeing so many different people and departments in that one visit that they have different bills.
And those bills may take months to get generated. You may go to the hospital in October and the bill may not be generated. The full bills may not be generated until January. So you just need to be aware that just because you got one bill may not be the complete cost for the services that were rendered at the ER.
And Greg, you mentioned that when you visit the hospital, they typically won't go first to your health insurance. They'll go for the personal injury protection. I understand a bit about the personal injury protection from previous episodes, and we all, I think, have a broad understanding of health insurance. But I'm interested in hearing from you, how else can different types of insurance coverage help with medical bills? Because I know one thing we haven't talked about yet is like medical payments coverage or med pay. How do all these work?
First of all, I'll explain that the reason the hospitals hold out for hoping that you have personal injury protection is because that's going to pay them dollar for dollar. Statutorily, they should be getting paid first. Varies on when that happens. But the reason they're doing that is because not only do they have a right to get paid by the personal injury protection if you have it, but also because personal injury protection is going to pay them typically dollar for dollar, where their health insurance is usually going to be doing reductions on their bill. MedPay is a different type of insurance, auto insurance, that is less common in Maryland because personal protection is mandatory for the insurance companies to offer it in Maryland. But MedPay is similar, except for that it only covers medical bills, where personal protection can cover medical bills and or lost wages or other costs related to your accident. MedPay typically is between $5,000 and $10,000. PIP is a little bit less. But again, MedPay is less common in Maryland.
I want to add to that. And the reason that PIP is often less than MedPay for people have is because people make a selection to have less. Because remember, as we talked about in a different podcast, for our viewers who may not know that, under personal injury protection, you can have a $2,500 policy, a $5,000 policy, or more. So we just see that often those people who have it, more common than not, people are just going for the $2,500, although you can purchase more, and I advise and suggest people should purchase more. And I want to also touch on what Greg said. The hospitals will hold out for personal injury protection. And I want to explain in a way that I think the viewers will understand. Most health plans are huge health plans. So what the health plans do with different hospitals and different providers, they have negotiated rates for certain treatment. So if you have one particular health plan, I don't want to say names, let's say you have health plan 1, and they may have negotiated that with providers who use their policy. For an x-ray, you can only charge our policyholders $100 for this x-ray. And another health plan may have negotiated that, well, for our providers, you can only charge $200 or $50 for this particular exam. If you go into a medical facility and you have no health insurance whatsoever, they're going to charge you their rate, not the negotiated rate. So if you don't use health insurance, they're going to be able to charge a higher rate for the treatment. And personal injury protection doesn't have negotiated rates per se with the hospitals. They do, to some extent, look at reasonableness. They have some factors that they use because sometimes they'll say, no, we think this is worth less. But typically if a hospital provider is paid through personal injury protection, they're typically able to collect a larger part of their bill, or if they're not able to collect it all. Whereas health plan is going to make them go under the contracted rate, which is usually a lower rate of pay.
Now, one thing you mentioned that I think is very interesting, and a lot of people may get stressed out about, frankly, to say the least, is say you visit the hospital and you have your visit in April, but you're first notified about the bill in July, months later, and it's not just one, it's up to 3 or even more. What should someone do when they receive those medical bills, but they're not sure what to do about it or how it's going to be paid?
I know with our clients, once we take on a client from an accident and we find out who the facilities are, we typically will begin reaching out to get the medical records and copy of the bills early on. So if we have a particular provider where it seems that, hey, it's been 30, 90 days, or more 60, 90 days, if they're not producing a bill, we're like, okay, wait a minute, what's going on? And I have had, in my time of us practicing, I've had a couple of occasions where the facility did not get us a bill in a timely manner or prior to the case being resolved after we waited or past the certain deadlines that the health plan would have required, and the hospital or facility had to eat that bill. When I say had to, not because there was necessarily a law right on point, but in our zealous advocacy of our client, we pointed out that it would be highly unfair for our client to now have to pay a bill that wasn't billed to their insurance within a timely, because there's a timeliness clause where a facility is supposed to bill the health plan with a certain period of time. If they miss that to no fault of the clients, then it wouldn't be fair, in my opinion, for my client, our clients to have to pay that bill. And we have had that happen in cases. It's not an everyday thing, but it's happened more often than it should, in my view.
The most atrocious situation would be if the hospital delayed on generating the bill for months. And at that point, the health insurance hadn't been used, even though it might have been presented, but it was presented too far where the health insurance didn't have to honor it. And at that point, even if the client had PIP, the PIP had been dispersed out to other providers. So it's completely unfair, in our opinion, for the hospital to hold them to that bill, which they didn't create in a timely fashion.
So in answer to your question, if you get that bill, you should give it to your attorney so the attorney can help you deal with that bill. So if you get, if you're stressed out because you got a bill in the mail and you're like, what do I do? You should let your attorney know immediately and get your attorney a copy of that bill so they could try to help you determine whether it's still within the window to be billed to health insurance, whether you may have some PIP coverage left, or that attorney may need to help you contact that facility to have that bill reduced or eliminated because it's past a fair timeliness point for you to be able to use other insurance.
So I'm hearing timeliness for all parties, but we're talking about our listener or someone who may have been involved in a car accident. Be timely. Be as timely as you can in communicating and getting things done. Like you had mentioned earlier, Stephanie, don't throw away any communications. Don't throw away the bills. That makes things harder. What other common challenges or issues do individuals face when paying their medical bills after an accident?
So a challenge that some people may find themselves in is that they don't have health insurance and they don't have personal injury protection. And that can be very stressful. Most Americans already, aren't happy to get an envelope in the mail saying, hey, you had to get medical care and here's a bill. But when you're in that situation due to no fault of your own, because you're hit in a car accident by someone else and you don't have health insurance or PIP, personal injury protection, to help pay for these bills, you may find, well, what do I do? And unfortunately, we do have clients who are in that position. And so what we try to do for those clients is contact the medical provider to maybe negotiate a reduction of the bill. Sometimes there's hospitals will have a hardship application. Sometimes they have charity plans that a person may qualify for. Or sometimes the hospital may be insistent that, hey, we want to be paid from the settlement recovery. And this is also why it's very important to speak to your lawyer, because if a hospital has not actually done certain paperwork or instituted what we would call a lien for that hospital bill, then the question becomes, does that bill get paid from the settlement proceeds, or is that bill going to remain lingering out there where the client may decide, hey, I'm going to deal with this bill later. Maybe the client's going to decide that they're going to file bankruptcy because the bills are too much and we would have to refer them to a bankruptcy attorney, or they may decide that they're just not going to pay the bill at all. So these are things that are very important for that client to discuss with their personal injury attorney so that we can help them determine what their options are if the bills are not able to be paid through health insurance or personal injury protection, or the bill is just too of a hardship to be dealt with from the settlement proceeds. So there's some things they can do, and that would be a whole different subject of a podcast. So I'm just touching on that very briefly here because that begets people in that situation. It can get very involved.
Yeah, I would just add that the first thing is hopefully, things are rough, but by all means, if you can afford it, get health insurance. That's the most important thing. Get auto insurance. And if you have auto insurance, get personal protection. And if you don't have those things, understand that it may be some time before you get your recovery because the bills are not going to be paid directly from the wrongdoer vehicle insurance company that caused the accident. That can happen. That'll happen hopefully towards the end of the case from your recovery, but they're not directly paying your bills as they come in. So there's going to be a stressful period between accident and recovery. But if you do have the insurance, then obviously you need to communicate with your attorney, make sure the attorney has all the information, the insurance card information, so they can help coordinate the payments where they need to be.
And or contact the providers to see if perhaps a reduction can be negotiated.
How can individuals ensure they document their medical expenses properly for insurance purposes?
Well, typically there's going to be a bill issued. So, most people are not going to have any idea of what that bill is going to be until they receive the bill. I see ranges for certain things that I see repeat a lot for maybe an office visit at a certain particular provider that may be common in our geographic area. But, it's very difficult to predict how much a hospital bill is going to be before the person goes. So once you get that bill or the statement, it should be broken down in writing, itemized, so that we know exactly what that bill is. And you want to keep that. Take a picture of it on your phone, scan and email it to yourself, put it in a file. But it's very important to keep those bills.
And journaling your medical treatment providers is very good too. I can't tell you how many times Stephanie and I deal with cases where, particularly in more serious cases, the client forgets which providers they've gone to and which providers have treated or they've complained to about the accident, and it'll come up later on, sometimes a year plus into the case, they'll remember certain providers that they had forgotten to tell us about.
So if you go to the provider's office, ask for a business card. Get the business card for the provider. Take a back and front picture of it, if it's a back and front type of business card, on your phone. And, we're in a new age of technology than when Greg and I, graduated from college, law school, and even first became lawyers. And so a technique that I like to use even for myself is you could take a picture of it. You could text it to yourself. You could email it to yourself with a subject line in case you ever have to revisit that, because you might have a bunch of pictures on your phone like, okay, where is it? But take a picture of the card, because you just never know later when you're like, oh my gosh, who was that doctor? Or a lot of times clients will contact me and say, hey, I went to Dr. Johnson on Liberty Road. Or I went to the doctor on Liberty Road and I have no idea who they are. And Liberty Road could be a road with many doctors' offices and practices, and I have absolutely no idea who this doctor is on this specific road that my client went to, and they have no idea. And in fact, they even got the street wrong. So it's very simple. When you're checking in or checking out of the doctor's office, get the business card. Try to keep the business card, but in case you misplace the business card, taking a picture of it and texting it to yourself and or emailing it to yourself, the subject line can help it be recovered later when needed.
Greg and Stephanie, is there any bit of parting advice on this topic of medical expenses that you'd like to offer? Or rather, Stephanie, as you mentioned, not advice, but information for our listeners today.
I think that it's very important that if you find yourself in an accident, it could seem to you very straightforward. I was injured. It wasn't my fault. I'm just going to contact the insurance company. I'm just going to go get medical help. And I'm going to talk to the insurance company and negotiate with myself to take what they offer me. I would suggest no. I would suggest contact a lawyer, have the lawyer help you, because there are so many moving parts to how to make yourself whole after an accident. And a well-versed lawyer who's willing and capable of advocating for you can make it so much easier for you and can make your outcome so much greater.
I would add that because of those moving parts, it's probably a good idea to do journaling. Get a notebook or something from CVS, get a folder or something, write down the providers and your insurance information, and make sure you articulate your pain.
This has been The Crash Course with Stephanie Moran and Greg Watson. I'm Sam Henninger. Remember to like, follow, subscribe, and share, because we're going to continue having these very informative conversations to keep you safe and whole. Thank you again, Stephanie and Greg.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.